I couldn't have a child due to unexplained infertility, but my husband, who had been with me for 5 years, was still an important person to me. However, such a husband said that he wanted to divorce me for an ambiguous reason. I was sad and upset, and I refused to divorce my husband, but when I learned of his intentions behind the divorce he wanted, I vowed to take revenge on him. My name is Irene. Me and my husband, Tyler, have been married for 5 years. It's not like it was at the beginning of our marriage, but our relationship is not bad at all, and I am happy with my husband. I don't have children, so I'm not saying I don't think about it. However, there is of course a reason why there are no children for 5 years, and it is called infertility. However, it does not mean that there is a clear cause for either me or my husband, and the test results themselves were not abnormal. However, it seems that the state of not being able to have children is called unexplained infertility, and that is exactly what we did. There are 2 main ways that couples who are in this state can take. You can either continue to explore the possibility of natural pregnancy, or you can conduct more serious tests to determine the cause. At first, I underwent various tests because I wanted to have children, but the results were not good and the cause could not be identified. For the time being, methods such as in vitro fertilization were proposed, but by that time, my husband and I were tired of infertility treatment, and we decided that if we couldn't have children, we had no choice. Of course, I can't completely give up hope because I still can't give up the possibility of a natural pregnancy, but I'm of the opinion that I don't have to force myself to have a child. I sometimes feel lonely when my husband is away at work, and I still think about what it would be like to have a child at a time like this. However, I do housework almost every day, greets my husband when he comes home from work, and spends time with the 2 of them while talking about trivial things. It's not that there's anything special about it, and it's not an interesting life, but it's fulfilling in its own way, and I've been wanting to spend this kind of time with my husband for decades to come. That's why it's not a problem if we can't have children. I came to think so, and I believed that my husband would feel the same way. However, it seems that my thoughts were complacent, and on the anniversary of the 5th year of marriage, my husband asked me for a divorce. He said he didn't hate me by any means. He said that he still likes me and appreciates me for my daily chores. However, there was certainly dissatisfaction with not having children at this age, and that was the reason for the decision to divorce. Since neither of us is responsible for infertility, it is true that there is a high possibility that my husband and I are simply not compatible. If you talk about something you don't like, there is a possibility that you will have a child if the other person changes. If I only look at my husband's desire to have children, it wasn't a bad story. However, in my life with my husband, I have never seen him so eager for a child. I was the one who was enthusiastic about fertility treatment, and he always had the attitude that it didn't matter which way it went. The word divorce came out of the mouth of my husband, because he can't have children. That seemed like a vague reason to me. However, when I asked if there was any other reason, the only reason was the child. I refused to accept the divorce because I couldn't agree with the divorce just because it was just a matter of time. To be honest, I wanted to be with my husband all the time even if I couldn't have children, so I don't deny that I had a kind of betrayal of such feelings. More than that, I couldn't agree with my husband's too vague reason for divorce. However, he may have already taken into account my reaction, and although he did not choose strong measures such as a trial, he has been pressuring me for divorce many times since then. By the time such a life continues for several months, our marital life has cooled down, and it is not as good as before. Even in such a state, I did not approve of the divorce and continued to maintain a cold marital life with him half willingly. But we can't continue to live like that forever. My husband must have tried to get out of this situation somehow. Why don't we have dinner together and talk again? We haven't eaten together much lately. You can't leave the divorce story hanging in the air forever, can you? One day, he called out to me. The last time my husband and I ate together was a few months ago. I didn't want to leave a relationship with my husband as it was, so I accepted his proposal and sat down at the same table for the first time in a long time. Would you like a drink before we talk? As soon as the meal started, my husband suggested alcohol, but I haven't been able to drink at all for a long time. I got drunk just a little, and when I got a reasonably high amount of alcohol from my husband in the past, I fell asleep as if I was going to collapse after just one sip. Of course, he knew about it, and I think he said it to ease the situation. He looked a little disappointed that I had refused, but he laughed and flushed it. With some awkwardness as it is, the two of us proceed with our meal. In between, if he shakes the topic, I will return it safely, and I will also shake the safe topic to him. I know it's an awkward exchange, but our relationship has cooled so much that it seems awfully ridiculous that I never agree to a divorce. Even during the conversation, I rarely turn my face to him, and most of my eyes are on the screen of my smartphone. I continued a conversation with my husband while returning messages to her recently made girlfriend, Pamela. He doesn't pay attention to it and talks about divorce, but you know I'm only half listening. I didn't think they were talking seriously, and we just had to eat each other. As I was eating, I suddenly felt uncomfortable with my body. Even though I hadn't drunk, I was intoxicated. Without being able to say anything to my husband, my consciousness goes away. As it was, I collapsed and fell down on the table. I faintly see him sitting across from me, opening his mouth, and I lose consciousness. It's finally over. Just before I lost consciousness, I overheard my husband's words. I wonder how much time has passed since then. I don't know about it, but when I woke up I was in a hospital bed. And on my side was my husband, who was injured all over his body. As far as I can see, there don't seem to be any major scratches, but there are many abrasions, so much so that I think someone has attacked him. I was surprised by his appearance, and when I looked elsewhere, I saw my parents looking at me with concern. They look relieved when they see me awake, but they have a somewhat complicated expression. And in addition to my husband and parents, there are two others. One is a man who is a colleague of my husband's whose face I have seen in the past. The other was a strange woman crying beside my husband. As soon as I woke up, I asked my husband a question to sort out the situation that caught my eye. Not to mention his injury, but also a woman who cries and snuggles up to him. And why are my colleagues from his company here? Why is he in the hospital in the first place? There were so many things I wanted to ask, and my husband opened his mouth to explain from the beginning. It all started when you drank alcohol. Do you remember? I shook my head to my husband, who looked somewhat tired. I remember feeling intoxicated while eating, but I don't remember drinking alcohol. However, he asserts that she drank and explains the whole story as it is. It is said that I, who drank alcohol and got drunk, resisted a divorce talk and went on a rampage. To put it simply, that's it, and at that time, he was injured all over his body. No matter how much my husband, who is a man, has more power, it is extremely difficult to suppress it while caring for me, who is drunk and does not adjust to it. He decided that it was too much to handle, so he called a colleague and a woman next to him to help. When I asked, I heard that this woman was an acquaintance of his, and he said that there would be situations where the same woman would be more helpful if she restrained me. However, when the woman came to our house, I had already collapsed and was silent. According to my husband, I was so drunk that I got drunk and hit my head when I fell. My colleague who arrived late also grasped the situation and brought me to the hospital because he was worried that my husband was injured and that I had hit my head. In order to explain the situation to me, it seems that both my colleagues and women stayed behind and connected to the present. For some reason, my husband was not sharp enough to explain why the woman was crying like this, but he wanted her to leave it alone. I felt something inexplicable, but after listening to the whole story, I kept my mouth shut. After all, I don't remember it, and I don't know how to answer. Seeing me silently thinking about trying to trace my memory, my husband continues to talk as it is. As long as this has happened, it is impossible to continue living as a couple. I'm sorry for Irene, but please accept the divorce this time. In this case, in addition to the fact that I was drunk, my husband said that there was something wrong with me for forcing him to get a divorce, but he said that he could not be with a person who was violent. Even though I was drunk, if what my husband said was true, I was the one who was at fault. If he sued, I would be at a disadvantage. However, he said that he did not want to contact the police, saying that it was only a marital matter, and begged for a divorce instead. My parents and others seemed to be grateful for Hi's thoughtfulness and showed a somewhat relieved face. In some cases, I may have had a criminal record, so I must have been grateful for my husband's kindness. However, I couldn't express it openly, and there were times when I didn't say anything while looking down, and silence fell on the spot. My husband's colleague is not in the mood to interject, and the woman who was crying just now is still looking down. The silent space that lasted for a while was broken by a woman and me who looked down. It was a laugh that the two of us raised. At first, it leaked out of nowhere as if they couldn't stand it, but gradually it turned into a burst of laughter from both of us. The two of us were looking down and shaking our shoulders not because of the weight of the air or the thought of what we had done. We just had to hold back our laughter. I can't do it anymore, don't make me laugh anymore, LOL. I've never seen such a farce before. The two of us, me and a woman, look at my husband and laugh. Considering the farce that had unfolded earlier, I couldn't stand it any longer. However, other than the two of us, they are confused because they don't know what it means. My husband's embarrassment was particularly great, and he looked at me alternately and looked at the woman with a stunned expression. What are you laughing at? I mean, aren't you guys meeting each other for the first time? The fact that I and the woman are acting as if we know each other seems to add to the confusion, and for some reason, he asks us questions while looking pale. After a quick laugh, I finally calmed down and opened my mouth to tell him the answer. The reason why we were laughing was because of the relationship between me and the woman. And also in the relationship between my husband and her. As you can see, Pamela, your affair partner, and I are friends. I mean, we only met a few months ago. He was upset by the word affair partner, and my parents and male colleagues all shifted their gaze to my husband at once. As I explain to everyone, Pamela and I tell what I have been up to. It all started a few months ago. When my husband approached me for the first time about divorce, I doubted the vague reason for the divorce. And with the help of the feeling of being betrayed by him, I began to investigate him. If I'm going to get a divorce, at least I want a reason that I can be comfortable with. The research that I started with this feeling has yielded unexpected results. That was the fact of my husband's affair and the existence of his affair partner, Pamela. The reason why I wanted to have children was vague and unclear, and it was kind of natural for me to feel that way. Because the reason why my husband really wanted to divorce me was to remarry her, and he didn't care about the children. When I noticed that, I was angry with him, and I was determined not to divorce for free, so I postponed the divorce further to collect evidence of the affair. After gathering evidence, I decided to meet with her to say a word to his affair partner before divorcing my husband. However, there was a big problem. I was really surprised when Irene told me he was married. Tyler told me he was single all his life. Yes, she herself, who was supposed to be having an affair, did not know about the affair. After all, both Pamela and I were deceived by him. When we found out, we decided to collude and take revenge on my husband. Do you know why I kept going through divorce after that? I knew you wouldn't be able to stand it anymore. While I continued to refuse to divorce, Pamela continued to pressure my husband to marry her. If that happens, my husband will be impatient to get a divorce from me as soon as possible. In the midst of all this, Pamela confides in him that she is aware that he is having an affair, and then tells him that she wants to remarry. In addition to that, she added, she wants to remarry, but if this situation continues any longer, she will be at her limit. If he won't divorce his wife soon, she will have to separate from him in the near future. If this is all she says, my husband has no choice. He has no choice but to divorce me, even if it is a little too much. However, he is the one who is having an affair, and even if I file a lawsuit, I cannot divorce him unless I allow it. This plan came out of the mouth of my husband, who thought about what to do then. Mixing high-strength liquor with my meals and making it all up while I was unconscious. I knew in advance, so I went along with such a farce, but the plan is too vague. Haha. To be honest, if you mix a high alcohol content in your meal, you will notice it by the taste. It was quite hard to pretend not to notice it and eat. Even after waking up in the hospital, it was hard for me to continue to pretend that I was unaware of my husband's plans. Pamela seemed to be holding back her laughter because she was crying because she was worried about my husband, but she was watching my husband's face with a serious face. I want to be praised for putting up with it so far. You did that wound yourself, didn't you? Well done. I think you've thought enough about not calling the police. Such a stupid plan. As soon as it is investigated in earnest, it will be in tatters. I'm assuming that it happened while I was unconscious, and his colleague and my parents joined me later, so only my husband and Pamela know the truth about this time. If the two of them were silent, there would be no way to find out what happened. So if you can handle it privately and make it a decisive blow to the divorce, that's fine. I couldn't have found out that was actually self-staged if he investigated. You called my parents and colleagues to be witnesses, right? Especially if my parents feel responsible for this and get a settlement money, do you feel like it's a profit? I can see through your shallow thoughts. If I said that and laughed with my nose, the whole story of my husband's plan will be exposed in broad daylight. Originally, it was such a bad plan that it could not be carried out without the help of me, the victim. However, my impatient husband actually carried out such a stupid farce and tried to make me a perpetrator. This fact is seen not only by me and Pamela, but also by my parents and his colleagues, whom my husband called to be witnesses, and there is no excuse for him no matter how he tries to fix it. Of course, this was not the only evidence, and Pamela was also moving. I took a video of Tyler making his own wounds. He also broke things in his house to prove that Irene was on a rampage. There's no excuse. With Pamela's words, he understands exactly what he is in and holds his head with a pale face. The eyes of the people around me who looked at him were terribly cold, including me. Now that he can't get a settlement from my parents, and his colleagues at the company know everything, it's only a matter of time before this thing becomes a rumor in the company. If that happens, it is not hard to imagine that there will be nothing left for him. As a wife, I deprived my husband of all of his affair partner and social status, which he was thinking of remarrying. That was Pamela's plan for me and me. That's it, isn't it? So I'll divorce you as you wish, wouldn't you be happy? I put my hand on my husband's shoulder as he knelt down and whispered in his ear. After that, I agreed to a divorce with my husband, who wanted to divorce me a lot. I didn't forget to ask him for alimony, and I also complained that he tried to make me the perpetrator. With the testimony of me and Pamela as well as sufficient evidence, I was able to win the case and put a clean slate in my relationship with him. The subsequent husband, as we expected, lost his wife, his second marriage, and his position in the company. Neither Pamela nor I were interested in such a man anymore, and it is now a laughable story that we fell for such a man in the past. There is no doubt that he was a terrible man, and I don't want to be involved in the rest of my life. However, I am grateful that I was able to become friends with Pamela thanks to him.